This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Queens, New York, 1974. John Cummings and Douglas Colvin invite Jeff Hyman to help them start a band. Cummings would play guitar, Colvin would play guitar and sing, and Hyman would play drums, even though Hyman also was a singer, singing for the glam punk band Sniper. Cummings and Colvin also recruited their friend Richie Stern to play bass, but after a few practices, it was evident that Stern didn't know how to play bass. So needless to say, that didn't work out, and Colvin switched from guitar to bass, making Cummings the only guitarist in the band. Inspired by Paul McCartney's old pseudonym, Paul Ramone, Colvin adopted the stage name of Dee Ramone, and he convinced the other members to take on the last name of Ramone so that they could be called the Ramones. The others agreed, and Cummings became Johnny Ramone, and Hyman became Joey Ramone. Dee and Johnny's friend, Thomas Erlewine, became the band's manager, and another friend of the band, Monty Melnick, who later became the band's tour manager, got them access to Manhattan's performance studio for rehearsals. Since Dee had a hard time playing bass and singing at the same time, Erlewine convinced everyone that Joey should be the band's new lead singer. Early on, the band pretty much agreed to cut out all the fluff and get right to the point with their songs. Johnny even refused to play guitar solos as he didn't like them. The songs were fairly simple, often only featuring 2 or 3 chords. The Ramones played their first official gig on March 30th, 1974 at Performance Studio. The few audience members there must have been confused. The band played 7 songs, basically, and almost all of the songs were very fast-paced and less than 2 minutes long. Yep, the Ramones' first official show likely lasted no more than 15 to 20 minutes.
When you guys first came along, you didn't sound like anybody else, you didn't look anything like anybody else. How did the average people react to you back then?
Like we were aliens.
Really?
We were from Mars.
Still, the Ramones got more gigs, and during a time when a brand new music scene was rising up that seemed to revolve around 2 legendary clubs located in downtown Manhattan, Max's Kansas City and CBGB. In fact, it was an entirely new genre of music later known as, quote, punk rock, which was deeply influenced by the garage rock of the 1960s, but took on an ethos of sticking a middle finger to all the overproduced corporate mainstream rock of the era. That said, Joey was having a hard time playing drums and singing at the same time, so Erlewine was like, no problem, let's just recruit a new drummer so you can only sing, buddy. Erlewine held auditions and would play drums himself to show the auditionees how to play the song, but in the process, everyone realized that Erlewine was so good that he should just be the drummer, so he was like, okay, fine. Erlewine took on the stage name Tommy Ramone. In this rising punk rock scene in New York, the Ramones stood out not only for their insanely energetic, loud, and catchy songs, but also their appearance. They often appeared on stage in Converse high tops, torn blue jeans, and leather jackets, apparently to honor the greaser subculture of the 1950s. Simply put, they didn't look like other bands. On August 16th, 1974, the Ramones played their now famous first show at the aforementioned CBGB. Dee shouted out his later trademark, 1, 2, 3, 4, to help the band jump into each song. This is something that a lot of bands do today, by the way, but at the time it was a new thing. A dude named Legs McNeil, who later helped start Punk Magazine, was in attendance, and he later wrote of the show, quote, they were all wearing these black leather jackets, and they counted off this song, and it was just this wall of noise. They looked so striking. These guys were not hippies. This was something completely new. Soon the band earned a residency at CBGB. For the rest of the year, they played there at least 70 more times. Each set averaged about 17 minutes from beginning to end. Each song averaged well over 160 beats per minute. Meanwhile, the band had caught the attention of a dude named Craig Leon, who worked for Sire Records. He convinced Seymour Stein, the co-founder of Sire, to sign them to the label. Tommy Ramone later said of Leon, quote, quote, "He risked his career to get us on the label." Not only that, Stein's wife, Linda, left her teaching career to manage the band, along with Danny Fields. By the time the Ramones recorded their debut album in February 1976, they were the unequivocal leaders of the New York City punk rock scene, especially due to the unique style of Joey Ramone, who stood a towering 6 foot 6 inches. They recorded over a period of just a few days at Plaza Sound Studio, located on the 8th floor of the famous Radio City Music Hall. It cost just over $6,000. That said, for a band that was pretty much the definition of punk, they were true professionals throughout the entire recording process, with much attention to every little detail. Leon and Tommy both produced. The entire band had a say in writing the lyrics, which were about topics usually not found in rock songs. These topics included violence, drug use, male prostitution, and even Nazism. Sire released their debut self-titled studio album on April 23rd, 1976. It featured 14 songs, but clocked in at just 29 minutes and 4 seconds. It featured this now iconic cover, which is today basically one of the most imitated album covers. The critics absolutely loved it, and today it's widely recognized as one of the greatest albums of all time. However, the album didn't do so well commercially, only peaking at number 111 on the US Billboard 200 chart. Sire did release 2 singles off of it, Blitzkrieg Bop, which today is still arguably their most recognizable song, and I Wanna Be Your Boyfriend. Other notable songs off the album that later became widely recognized include Judy is a Punk, I Don't Want to Walk Around With You, and Let's Dance, which was a cover of the hit song by Chris Montez. Despite not having a hit song on the radio, their self-titled debut basically solidified the genre of punk rock. At the very least, it brought punk into the mainstream. Also, most music journalists argue it is easily one of the most influential albums of all time, period. To promote the album, the band plays shows outside of New York City for the very first time. On July 4th, 1976, they played a memorable show at the Roundhouse in London, in which the leader of the band, T-Rex, Mark Bolan, came on stage. At another show in London, the Ramones met members of the Sex Pistols and the Clash, and some say this was a pivotal moment with regards to launching the United Kingdom punk rock scene. For the rest of 1976, the Ramones solidified their reputation as a dynamic live act as they toured all over North America. The relentless touring would continue for the next 20 years. Meanwhile, the band returned to the studio to record what would become their second studio album, Leave Home, which Sire released on January 10th, 1977. Tommy Ramone once again produced it, but Tony Bon Jovi, the cousin of musician John Bon Jovi, also came in to produce, and it definitely had a higher production value overall. Critics also adored Leave Home, though not quite as much as the band's debut album. The album also didn't find much commercial success. It peaked at just 148 on the Billboard 200, despite Sire promoting the album heavily. It featured the singles Swallow My Pride, I Remember You, and Carbona Not Glue. It also featured the unforgettable song Pinhead with the chant Gabba Gabba, we accept you, one of us. Tommy later explained that the song was about inclusivity and welcoming all the freaks out there to join the Ramones. The band toured constantly the rest of the year all over Europe and North America to promote the album. I mean, they played shows almost every freaking day. When the band wasn't touring, they were recording. In the spring of 1977, during a time when a ton of New York-based punk bands were signing major label record deals, the band recorded Sheena is a Punk Rocker, which became the band's first radio hit in the United States, reaching 81 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. The song would also be on the band's third studio album, Rocket to Russia, which Sire released on November 4th, 1977. Bon Jovi also helped produce this one, and critics once again generally loved it. Not only that, based on the momentum of the success of Sheena is a Punk Rocker, Rocket to Russia got up to 49 on the Billboard 200. The album also gave the band another radio hit, Rockaway Beach, which got all the way up to 66 on the Billboard Hot 100. Rockaway Beach, believe it or not, remains the highest charting single for the band ever. Rocket to Russia, however, was the last Ramones album Tommy Ramone helped out with. He left the band that year to pursue a career as a record producer. Regardless, the Ramones carried on. Oh, and Tommy would still produce future Ramones albums. He was just tired of touring, basically. And Tommy was even nice enough to help them find a replacement on drums. He found Mark Bell, who had formerly been with the band Richard Hell and the Voidoids. Mark not only accepted the offer to join the band, but also promptly changed his stage name to Marky Ramone. On December 31st, 1977, the Ramones recorded a show at the Rainbow Theatre in London that would eventually make up their first live concert album, It's Alive. From there, they continued their grueling tour schedule of both North America and Europe for most of 1978. That spring and summer, they decided to be a bit more experimental in the studio, especially with Marky recording with them for the first time. The songs were longer, and there were more elements of bubblegum pop, and even seemed to have a Beach Boys influence. Their songwriting had also definitely matured and was a bit more complex. Johnny even turned down his guitar sometimes. There were more ballads. Ed Stasium came in to help produce, and these songs made up what would become their fourth studio album, Road to Ruin, released by Sire on September 21st, 1978. Critics were mixed on this one, but later on it would become a fan favorite. Road to Ruin peaked at just 103 on the Billboard 200, and the three singles off it were flops: Don't Come Close, Needles and Pins, and She's the One. The irony of this was that the band was kind of attempting to have broader appeal with this one. However, the album also featured the song I Wanna Be Sedated, which eventually became arguably the band's second most recognizable song after Blitzkrieg Bop. In 1979, the Ramones made their major motion picture debut in Rock and Roll High School.
The facilities are yours. Do whatever you want.
Directed by Roger Corman. The plot of the entire film revolves entirely around the band and was about youth rebellion. Interestingly, the movie didn't help the band become household names much. By this time, they had an extreme, almost cult-like following, still touring relentlessly by the way, but had little mainstream success. They still caught the attention of the accomplished producer Phil Spector, however, and the band accepted his offer to produce what would become their fifth studio album, End of the Century, which Sire released on February 4th, 1980. Spector also had the goal of expanding the appeal of the Ramones. While the Ramones already had catchy songs, Spector tried to smooth the rough edges of the band with this album, so to speak. It kind of paid off. End of the Century became the band's highest charting album of all time, peaking at number 44 on the Billboard 200 and number 14 on the UK Albums chart. It also got some radio airplay, at least in Europe, with the singles Baby I Love You and Do You Remember Rock and Roll Radio? However, End of the Century also disillusioned some fans and critics, and it often doesn't hold up today as it did their previous four albums. Even Johnny later said about it, quote, End of the Century was just watered down Ramones. It's not the real Ramones. For the rest of 1980 and into 1981, the Ramones continued to constantly tour to promote the album. Notably, they toured both Asia and Oceania for the first time. In March 1981, they returned to the studio, and Sire got yet another producer to try to broaden the band's appeal, this one named Graham Goldman. Goldman had made a name for himself in the band 10cc. Around the time of these recording sessions, Joey's girlfriend, Linda, had fallen in love with none other than his bandmate, Johnny. This revelation that Johnny had essentially stolen Joey's girlfriend pretty much permanently ended their friendship. That said, it surprisingly didn't end the band. Oh, by the way, Johnny and Linda eventually had a long, happy marriage. Anyway, the new material the Ramones recorded ended up making up what became their sixth studio album, Pleasant Dreams, released by Sire on July 20th, 1981. Joey wrote a song on the album called The KKK Took My Baby Away that some speculated was about Johnny stealing his girlfriend, but no one from the band ever admitted that. But yeah, that was a single off the album, actually. Other singles off Pleasant Dreams included We Want the Airwaves and She's a Sensation. Pleasant Dreams was not a commercial hit and got mixed reviews from critics. Despite the tensions between Joey and Johnny for the rest of 1981 and first half of 1982, the band continued to tour constantly, but it did slow down, finally, for this second half of 1982. By this time, the band was struggling to keep it together, mostly due to drug addiction. Joey and Marky's addiction to alcohol, and Dee Dee's addiction to heroin. In October, the Ramones kind of got their punk roots back with the help of producers Richie Cordell and Glenn Kolotkin, recording what would become their 7th studio album, Subterranean Jungle, released by Sire on February 23rd, 1983. In addition to the single, Time Has Come Today, it featured the standout cover of Little Bit of Soul, which originally was by John Carter and Ken Lewis. Subterranean Jungle was the first Ramones album to feature someone other than Joey Ramone singing lead vocals on a song, with Dee Dee singing lead on Time Bomb. Indeed, Subterranean Jungle felt like the band had returned to the edgier style of their first 4 albums, and critics generally welcomed this return. However, the album was another commercial flop. Not only that, but shortly after Subterranean Jungle's release, Marky quit the band. Well, he was actually kind of fired due to his alcoholism. This didn't faze Joey, Johnny, and Dee Dee, though. They promptly found a replacement drummer, Richie Reinhardt. Obviously, Richie's new stage name was Richie Ramone. With Richie, the band continued to tour, and then tour some more for the rest of 1983 and all of 1984. Joey later recalled that Richie had, quote, saved the band. He's the greatest thing to happen to the Ramones. He put the spirit back in the band. Richie would go on to sing both lead and background vocals on Ramones songs and had a lot of input with songwriting. In July 1984, the band recorded what would become their 8th studio album, Too Tough to Die, released by Sire on October 1st. At this point, the Ramones had given up trying to pursue mainstream success, and they just wanted to let loose and have fun. So yeah, the result was Too Tough to Die, being their most critically acclaimed album since Road to Ruin. Many critics observed that the album seemed to be a response to the rise of a new genre of music called hardcore punk, which Tommy Ramone, Thomas Erlewine, had particularly played a big role in. It features their only instrumental song, Durango 95. Yeah, you probably didn't know they had an instrumental song, did you? It also featured the single, Howling at the Moon, Sha-La-La. Despite the glowing reviews from critics, Too Tough to Die also didn't sell many copies. Throughout 1985, the band continued to constantly tour, but notably released a single written mostly by Joey that protested the American president Ronald Reagan and his visit to a German military cemetery that included Nazi soldiers in it. He called it Bonzo Goes to Bitburg, and it was a big hit on American college radio. The song would appear on their 9th studio album, Animal Boy, which they recorded throughout the entire year. Sire released it on May 19th, 1986, and Jean Beauvoir of the Plasmatics produced it. Animal Boy featured less of both Joey and Johnny Ramone, though, as the two often didn't want to be in the same room as each other. Due to that, both Dee Dee and Richie stepped up and contributed quite a bit. Animal Boy was the band's most political album yet. However, critics generally didn't like it, saying they had strayed too far from their original sound. Despite critics trashing it, Animal Boy had 3 additional singles, Somebody Put Something in My Drink, Crummy Stuff, and Something to Believe In, which poked fun at the benefit concerts of the era like Live Aid. The band, once again, you guessed it, toured relentlessly for the rest of 1986 and into 1987, touring South America for the first time, then taking some time off to record what would become their 10th studio album, Halfway to Sanity. Recording did not go well and the band generally was not getting along. Once again, Dee Dee and Richie stepped up because Joey and Johnny weren't contributing as much. Sire released Halfway to Sanity on September 15th, 1987. It got mixed reviews from critics and little radio airplay, but did feature 2 singles, Real Cool Time and I Wanna Live. Shortly before the release of Halfway to Sanity, Ritchie quit the band over disagreements regarding how much royalties he was getting paid. The band scrambled to find his replacement and went with Clem Burke, who used to be the drummer for the band Blondie. Clem adopted the stage name Elvis Ramone, but sadly, his drumming couldn't keep up with the rest of the band, so they had to let him go after just 2 shows. However, the good news was that Markey had by this time quit alcohol, and the band agreed to let him return. Pretty much for the next 2 years straight. They toured relentlessly. It was around this time that the group started to get a lot more love from alternative rock and college radio stations. Based on this development, Sire decided to release a Ramones Greatest Hits album. They called it Ramones Mania and put it out on May 31st, 1988. For newbies, it was a great introduction to the band. Meanwhile, from late 1988 until early 1989, the Ramones recorded what would become their 11th studio album, Brain Drain, released by Sire on May 23rd, 1989. The band hoped this would be their comeback album, but it was yet again another flop, sadly. It only got up to 122 on the Billboard 200, and the reviews of it were again mixed. That said, it featured 2 singles, I Believe in Miracles and Pet Sematary, which got a lot of radio airplay and made it all the way up to number 4 on Billboard's new modern rock chart. This song was also the theme song for the Stephen King movie of the same name. By the time of Brain Drain's release, Dee Dee had finally sobered up, but now he wanted to quit the band. He toured with the band one last time, playing his last show with the Ramones on July 5th. Dee Dee would go on to try a solo career as a rapper and eventually form the band Chinese Dragons after the whole rapping thing didn't work out. He also continued to write songs for the Ramones behind the scenes, by the way. So yeah, yet again, the Ramones needed to find a replacement for a member who had been there since the very beginning. It was a tough choice, but they finally went with bassist and longtime Ramones fan Christopher Joseph Ward, who adopted the stage name of C.J. Ramone. Over the next 2 years, the Ramones all sobered up and did nothing but tour. In 1992, the band left their longtime record label, Sire Records, and signed instead with Radioactive Records. Before the Ramones left Sire, Sire released a second live album by them called Loco Live, which featured 33 songs from various performances. After their longest break from recording yet, they finally returned to the studio in early 1992 to record what would become their 12th studio album, Mondo Bizarro, released by Radioactive on September 1st, 1992. It received mixed reviews and featured 3 singles, Poison Heart, Strength to Endure, and Touring. Speaking of which, they went right back to touring for the rest of 1992 and all of 1993, pretty much non-stop, of course. In between tours, they had a blast recording a bunch of cover songs and eventually turned that into their first and only covers album, Acid Eaters, released by Radioactive on December 1st, 1993. Critics generally dug it. By this time, pop punk was now a popular genre, and once again, the youngins began to check out the Ramones' older stuff more and more. With this new development, after another year of non-stop touring in 1994, the Ramones headed back to the studio one final time, really treating it as the last time they would ever record together. They even called the new album Adios Amigos, which translates to Goodbye Friends in Spanish. They announced to their fans that unless Adios Amigos was a smash hit, their tour promoting it would be their last, their farewell tour. Radioactive released Adios Amigos on July 18th, 1995, and nope, it definitely was not a smash hit. The only song to get modest airplay on alternative rock radio stations was their cover of Tom Waits' I Don't Want to Grow Up. Regardless, the farewell tour, which once again saw them touring much of the entire world, was indeed a smashing success. The farewell tour was supposed to last just 1 year, but ended up lasting 2, including a 1996 appearance at the 6th Lollapalooza Festival. The Ramones played their final show on August 6, 1996 at the Palace in Hollywood. A recording of the show later later came out as both an album and video. Crazily enough, for the rest of the 1990s, the band's popularity only grew. On July 20th, 1999, Dee Dee and Tommy reunited with Joey, Johnny, Marky, and CJ at the Virgin Megastore in New York City for an autograph signing to mark the release of their boxed set Hey Ho Let's Go, the anthology. More than 1,000 fans showed up. It was the last time all 4 original members of the band appeared in public together. In fact, today, all of the founding members of the Ramones are no longer alive. All of them dying relatively young. Joey died from lymphoma on April 15th, 2001. Dee Dee died from a heroin overdose on June 5th, 2002. Johnny died from prostate cancer on September 15th, 2004. And Tommy died on July 11th, 2014 of bile duct cancer. The 4 didn't live long enough to see them become even more popular more recently. Dee Dee, Johnny, and Tommy did live to see the Ramones inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on March 18th, 2002, and Johnny said it would have meant a lot to Joey to find out about it. In 2003, a popular documentary came out about the band called End of the Century, The Story of the Ramones. On literally the day of Johnny's death, the Ramones Museum opened not in New York City, but in Berlin, Germany. More evidence of the worldwide impact of the band. In 2011, the band got a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Over the last 25 years, various additional Ramones compilations and live albums have also been released and still sell well. Speaking of which, on April 30th, 2014, the Ramones' self-titled debut album finally became certified gold by the Recording Industry of America, meaning it sold 500,000 copies. Just 38 years after its release, eh? And this seems to be symbolic of the Ramones' entire career. Today, they are arguably more popular than they've ever been. It just took a little while for folks to catch on. They are also respected more today than they've ever been. They are number 26 on Rolling Stone magazine's 100 Greatest Artists of All Time list. The music critic Stephen Thomas Erlewine once wrote, quote, "The band's first 4 albums set the blueprint for punk, especially American punk and hardcore, for the next 2 decades." Indeed, the Ramones today remain one of the most influential rock bands of all time. There have been dozens of tribute albums. Today, thousands of prominent musicians continue to cite the band as a huge influence on their own music. There's even a popular children's show called Yo Gabba Gabba that pays respect to the band's catchphrase, "Gabba Gabba Hey." As it turns out, there's a lot of us freaks out there. Gabba Gabba Hey, indeed. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. Stand out with a beautiful website, easily engage with your audience, and sell anything. Your products, content you create, and even your time. I tried it out recently by building a website for my band, Electric Needle Room. Here are 3 things I love about Squarespace. Number 1, Squarespace helps me sell both digital and physical music on my site using a single interface. Number 2, Squarespace easily connects with your social media accounts. You can also automatically push website content to your social media accounts so your followers can share it too. Number 3, Squarespace has powerful blogging tools to share stories, photos, videos, and updates. Categorize, share, and schedule your posts to make your content work for you. Head to squarespace.com/beatgoeson for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to the link in the description of this video to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. I recently visited the place of the Ramones' first official gig, and there's a picture of it. And then, of course, I had to visit CBGB after that. And I also checked out where Joey Ramone used to live, down in Greenwich Village. So what's your favorite Ramones song or album? My favorite song is I Don't Want to Walk Around With You, and my favorite album by them is Road to Ruin. And as always, I love to read suggestions from you for future bands I should cover for this series. Thanks for watching.